What's up, Facebook friends, family? We're hanging out at SpaceCenter, Houston. Me and Kurt, we made our way over here right off of NASA Road. It's only a couple miles down the street from the KHEA radio studio. We totally didn't sneak in. I was joking about it earlier, but we didn't. We actually have clearance to be here, and they let us in. Honestly, it's a little hard to believe, but we're here, we're hanging out. We've been just walking up and down, looking at stuff, and we have somebody here that's gonna be able to give us his expert opinion and some facts, stuff we don't know. I'm asking questions, I don't have the answers. I'm asking Kurt, he doesn't know. I'm here with Dr. John Charles.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm great. I'm glad you're here. Good to
Yeah.
see you.
So, Dr. Charles, can you kind of give us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I just retired from NASA after almost 33 years in February of this year, and they picked me up over here fairly quickly. I'm the scientist in residence at SpaceCenter Houston, so I'm interested in telling folks like you what's going on behind the scenes here, what these artifacts represent. It also turns out I'm the hugest space geek you've ever known, and so I'm a big space historian, and I like to talk about and guide people through the space history exhibits here.
That's awesome. Well, we don't really know much about anything, and we saw a bunch of cool exhibits. So let's go check out some of the exhibits here and see if we can find out some stuff that we didn't know.
Super.
So I think the first thing we were going to do,
The first thing you're going to look at is the Skylab 1G trainer. This is the actual device that the astronauts trained in before they flew on Skylab in 1973. Skylab, you may ask, what was that?
yeah, I hear there were some really, really smart people that were working on that, and they must have been like geniuses. Can you tell us a little bit about who is behind Skylab? What kind of team put that together?
Skylab was America's first space station, launched in 1973, and it was started out as something called the Apollo Applications Program. It was supposed to be leftover Apollo hardware after the national goal of landing on the moon was accomplished. What do you do with all the rockets that we didn't use because things worked so smoothly? The plan was to build a space station. So the Skylab trainer is based on the third stage of a Saturn V rocket, which instead of being full of fuel was outfitted as a laboratory. And it was launched in '73. 3 separate crews went up to it for 1 month, then 2 months, then 3 months. And each of those set an endurance record, because in those days, 6-month or 1-year missions were unheard of. A month in space was a world record.
Wow.
And the goal of this was simply to learn what could be done in a space station should America choose to build one again in the future. So it was a pilot study of things that you could try in space to see what worked, what didn't work.
Cool. So how do you know so much about this?
Well, I grew up in the Skylab era. I grew up in the early space age, and when I decided I wanted to be a life scientist, a medical researcher, it turned out that Skylab was doing world groundbreaking medical research. That really formed the basis of my discipline for the next several decades. In fact, I have with me the publication of the results from Skylab, which served as our Bible in the life sciences research even after I came to NASA in Houston. Also, because I am a huge geek, I got it autographed by many of the guys that flew on it and many of the people on the ground that actually worked on the program.
That's cool.
At a Skylab reunion. So this is just my bona fides that I really am a space geek. But I would like to show you through the Skylab, and let's talk about what made it so special in those days.
Let's go check it out.
So some of the questions so far is, can Kurt actually wear an astronaut suit?
No, you cannot.
Well, I don't know if you would fit. Because last time I came, I went and looked at some of the space things, and they are like, I don't know, like the old ones. It's like people were smaller back in the 60s.
Well, astronauts were picked usually from the cadre of jet pilots, and jet pilots are usually fairly, let's say, compact and structured, just because it's hard to fit a large guy into a cockpit of a jet fighter.
And they have to be pretty athletic as well.
Pretty athletic, pretty robust, able to tolerate extreme conditions without really complaining about it, because there's a lot of those extreme conditions.
Yeah.
We're walking into the side of the Skylab trainer. This door was cut for our convenience, but the trainer was actually used by the astronauts upright. So it has a 1G orientation. There's a floor, actually there's a second story and a first story, and floors, and then the rest of the vehicle was sideways because astronauts would get into that and practice those mission phases in a different orientation. So we're going to walk in here and immediately become disoriented, which is the idea, because weightlessness is a disorienting environment. And as you walk in, you'll notice that there's an awful lot of room, an awful lot of volume in here, because this was the liquid hydrogen tank originally for a rocket ship. and it's got lots of everything you needed for your 6 months of flight, your 1 month and 2 months, and originally a 2-month flight that was extended to a 3-month flight. All of your dry goods are in these storage lockers here. All of the water you're going to need is in these water containers, and you can see one water container actually deployed with the water hoses to be used on it in flight. Other storage in the lockers above our heads here, an actual freezer. Astronauts had ice cream, and no, not the styrofoam astronaut ice cream you get in the gift shop, actual real Bluebell ice cream. I hope it was Bluebell back in those days.
It should be.
In those freezers. And there's a lot of interesting artifacts in here that appeal to me. For example, if you look over in the corner here, you see something that's called a body mass measurement device. That is how you weigh yourself in weightlessness. Because you're weightless doesn't mean you lose mass. I mean, you still have stuff. You still weigh something. There's just no way to weigh yourself in weightlessness by standing on a spring scale like you do in the bathroom. Mm-hmm. This device actually oscillated you very slowly back and forth, and it would calculate what your body mass was. So the scientists of the day could calculate how spaceflight affected your general health by how it changed your body weight.
So I have 2 questions.
Yes.
And Kurt, if you have a question as well.
I do.
Go ahead.
That's Paul White's, PJ White's, doing perpetual somersaults overhead here. And in fact, it's kind of fun to look at, because when you look at it, you'll see certain differences between it and the bathroom you might be used to on the ground. We can look at that in a second.
Yes.
But this is the top floor. So this is the actual deck that they were doing a lot of the experiments on. You'll notice it's a grid. It's a grid because the original plan was for this to be a fully fueled rocket stage that would boost itself into orbit, and then would be outfitted by the astronauts, and be emptied out, dried out, and outfitted as a space station. So this grid was the full. Shoes have little triangular cleats on the bottom of it.
Oh yeah.
And so you would just find the place you want to be and click and do a 45-degree turn and click yourself into place.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Let's step into the living compartment here. And this is kind of fun. There's several things to look at. The dominating feature here is a statue of Jack Lausma, an astronaut, demonstrating the shower. They all took one shower in the zero-G shower and decided it was easier just to use a wet towel and towel off. You towel off, you'd shower after you exercise on the exercise bicycle, shown right here, and that was a bicycle for both exercise and for metabolic studies. The experiments are all controlled on this experiment rack here. My favorite device is this thing called the lower body negative pressure device, which if you insert yourself up to the level of the hip and seal yourself off with a kayak waistband as well as these irises here, you could decompress by a little bit, just pull a slight decompression inside here, not a vacuum, but just a tiny fraction of the air pressure, and get the blood to pool in your feet just as if you were standing upright. So we can study the effects of weightlessness on the ability of the body to maintain upright posture without gravity.
It kind of looks like how I showered every day.
Oh, I thought you were going to say he
very much.
resembles Bruce Willis a little bit from here.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, there's another guy.
There's Owen Garrett in the kitchen.
Gotta watch out. You got things are above you too.
That's right. And he is at the zero-G dining room table or kitchen table, and he's eating food out of a container, and you can see his beverage container in weightlessness circulating above
Kind
him.
of looks like a ketchup bottle.
Well, they could put ketchup in it, but it's supposed to be a beverage. It's supposed to be orange drink or something.
Well, see his shoes, Kurt? That's what he was mentioning earlier. See how they have the triangles? Because they
That
could
way
walk
you can,
on.
you wouldn't really want to walk, but you would find a place you needed to work, and then sort of do a quick 45-degree angle
Oh,
turn.
so you kind of latch on.
Latch on, yeah.
That's
Now looking
awesome.
back in this direction, Kurt, you missed before, I think, the zero-G bathroom with the toilet in the wall, because why not? You're weightless. What's the big deal?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
And
I
it's
see
all-
it. You guys see it up there?
That's right. It's right behind that mirror. And that mirror was for making sure that you were aligned correctly with the toilet before you did your business.
That's funny.
Yeah.
You guys had to think through everything, because
See?
once you get up there, you really can't.
Oh, but it gets even grosser. You see those 3 little containers there? Everybody's urine was collected every urination every day in flight, and all your feces were collected as well for
That's why you
return
need
to
the
the earth.
ventilation system.
That's why the ventilation system. You can see the vent fan right there. Then down below are 3 sleeping compartments. Each guy got his own private sleeping station in flight for the first time on Skylab. So this was, well, here's something else to look at, a rotating chair. You know, the astronauts had motion sickness problems in flight. So the deal was you get into space on Skylab, and then you strap yourself into this chair and rotate and move your head to try and make yourself sick. And the goal was to see whether it got worse or better, and it turned out that after a few days in spaceflight, they could not become sick on this. The body had reorganized its neural control system, and they couldn't get sick. Luckily, they regained the ability to become sick when they returned back to the ground. So
somebody asked, what is the longest anyone has stayed in space?
the longest anybody's flown in space is a Russian cosmonaut named Valery Polyakov, who's a doctor who stayed in space for 14 months, and it was his second flight. He'd stayed up before for 6 months. Several others have flown for a year, and of course, just a couple of years ago, we did Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko did a 1-year ISS mission. I was the chief scientist for that mission.
So when kind of talk about why all of this was kind of important for everything, right? Like you had to think through, like you're in a place that you've never been before, possibly don't know what's going to be happening and what's next. You know?
Well, that's right. In the late 60s and early 70s, the goal was to keep moving beyond the moon and go off on other missions, possibly flying by Venus and then going to Mars. And a vehicle like this might have been used as an early interplanetary vehicle. This would have been an appropriate vehicle to live in for a 6-month visit to Mars and without landing, or a flyby of Venus. But this was all a way of taking all the ideas people have been having for years about how do you live in space and actually test them and see which ones worked and which ones didn't, so they would know how to build a space station in the future when the goal was really to go do something in space.
Awesome.
Let's walk through this way. This is also an important place to be. Right here is this is what would have been the liquid oxygen tank for the functional rocket, which of course it launched empty. And so in the environmentally friendly 1970s, you remember when Earth Day was a new thing and all that kind of stuff? This is where all the trash was accumulated. They didn't dump the trash out the door and just let it drift away. They actually dumped the trash through an airlock and let it accumulate in this big garbage dump attached to the space station. So I always thought that was a kind of a nice forward-thinking aspect of Skyway. And if you want to take a second, we can walk to the far end and look at some other aspects.
Yeah.
If you're just joining, we're at Space Center Houston talking to Dr. John Charles, hanging out, and it's a lot of fun. So we're just listening.
Look forward, you see this big white structure sticking off the side. That is the Apollo telescope mount, one of the first sets of solar telescopes that were flown in space to look at the sun without the obscuring aspects of Earth's atmosphere blocking some of the wavelengths. This solar telescope was launched at the top end of the whole Skylab stack. And of course, it was launched in line. Only when it got in orbit did it swing around to the side in its operational setting. And you'll notice one astronaut up here doing a spacewalk up to the very end to get something called film out of the cameras. You may recall there used to be this stuff in your cameras called film, because back in those days there was no such thing as electronic cameras. So they had film in the camera. They would go out and retrieve it periodically and put it in a lead-lined vault inside of the Skylab so radiation didn't fog the pictures that they had taken with such great care of the sun. Moving around further to the far end, we see a model, actually a training version of the capsule the astronauts arrived in, the Apollo capsule, the big white cone. Showing just about to dock with the Skylab
Now you and Charlie can go up there. I'm gonna hold your hand if you want to come.
You can see the long probe sticking out that would be inserted into the drogue on the Skylab. This is the probe. It would dock with the drogue there. Little latches on the end would engage with that cutout in the middle, and then this would be compressed and shrunk, bringing this set of O-rings into contact with another set of O-rings here as latches close between the two, forming an airtight seal between the crew transport vehicle and the space station in orbit.
Kind of feels a little bit like Star Wars.
It does look kind of like Star Wars. Well, in fact, Star Wars was actually modeled after a lot of this stuff, because this was high tech when Star Wars first started coming out in the late 70s. This was the model of space flight at that time. This is before the space shuttle started flying. So it's not surprising this looks sort of like C-3PO or R2-D2.
Are you a big fan of the Star Wars movies?
I am, especially the older ones, 4, 5, and 6, because that's what was popular when I was going to movies a lot. And something else about Skylab, it was the first space flight vehicle ever that allowed for rescue space flight. And so this docking port right here was a backup docking port. If there was a problem with that docking port, or if the capsule that came up and got broken and couldn't disconnect, they could send another one up and dock on the side here to bring the guys safely back home. Now, of course, it's a convenient way to look inside, and this is a way to look at what the experiments were inside of the what's called the multiple docking adapter. So the first part I showed you had a definite 1G orientation, had a down and an up. In this section, there was no 1G orientation. Experiments and workstations are around the periphery here, just wherever's convenient. In fact, if you come over here and look in that direction, you'll see something that's called the ATM control and display console. That's actually control panels upside down, and you can tell because just to the right of it is a chair. And you see the back of the chair sort of sticking down there, but the idea is the astronauts would be feet up, head down, working on that console. But over here, they'd be working more or less perpendicular to the vehicle in this experiment's materials processing experiment. So the idea was just to see how comfortable were people working in different orientations in different parts of the space station. Turns out on the International Space Station now, everything pretty much has a 1G orientation, but that 1G orientation depends on whether you're working on this floor, this is a floor, or this is a floor, or this is a floor, or this is a floor. So it's sort of the answer is a little of both. Yes, you like things to be 1G, but your 1G may be this way, or this way, or this way, depending on what you're working on.
So when did we start using space shuttles? I know you mentioned that earlier.
The space shuttle started flying in 1981, and it flew until 2011. So it flew for 30 years, 135 flights, 133 successful flights.
Cool. There's a lot of buttons.
There's an awful lot of buttons in here. Nowadays, it's all done with touch screens and flat panels. But like I say, this was technology that was left over or at least modified from Apollo, so they used as much 1960s technology as they could in here to make it cost efficient.
I feel like I would go through and push buttons.
You probably would, but you probably would rather after it was over, you probably wished you hadn't, because who knows what you might have done.
I don't know. I didn't touch anything.
That's right.
Oops.
Yeah.
Spill coffee. Like, oh.
Yeah, he's done that on some of our
Luckily, when you
equipment.
spill coffee in spaceflight, it doesn't really fall down, so it sort of blobs up, and if you get at it real fast with a towel, you can pick it up before it hits the delicate electronic circuits and shorts things out.
That's all we needed. That was my problem.
Good.
All right. Anything else that you wanted to go over
That
with?
wraps up our overview of Skylab. It's like I say, it's one of the features that brought me to NASA in the first place, to continue the work that we did my predecessors did on Skylab. And we had a chance to do more of the same on the space shuttle, and now work being done on the space station is setting the foundation for getting us to Mars.
It's awesome. We're excited. Let's. I guess on Friday they announced the people.
The first crew members for the upcoming commercial spaceships, actual spaceships built by commercial entities that NASA's going to be renting or leasing to fly astronauts on the space station. So
Is that a good idea?
It's a great idea, because that frees NASA up to do the next thing, like sending the Orion vehicle off to the moon and on to Mars.
Wow.
I was kind of disappointed I didn't get a phone call.
I didn't either, and it's a bit of a bummer, but then again, we got some good guys doing the job instead. So
Feel like they're
that's
ready.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome. Thank you, sir, for being with
pleasure.
us.
I'm
We're going to
delighted
head
to be
over
here.
to see a big spaceship now, inside.
Where do you go outside? So this is Dr. John Charles. We're at SpaceCenter Houston, and thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thanks very much for letting me do this.
We'd have to come and get you in studio where we can learn some more if you ever have an opportunity. We're not
Just say
too
when.
far.
I'm delighted to do it.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
All right, we're going on a trip. Follow me. Let's see. So look at these guys. Can you see that?
You think I could get into this NASA suit?
No, that looks like it's a size small. This one
small?
looks like a medium. I think you would need a large. Right? I don't know.
For sure, probably.
So I think we're gonna go check out some other stuff. We're going upstairs. We're going up some stairs, in elevators.
Lead the way, Gardy. We
Okay,
did
I
see
definitely know where I'm going.
Yeah, we're just wandering. Now, talk a little bit, Gardy. You can kind of help me with this a little bit.
I got
but, you. This is all part of the general admissions,
Yes.
and it's about $30 or so. You can
Yes.
get your ticket, bring your family out, and just have an entire day to explore kind of what's going on.
That's correct. So right now I think we're heading to Independence Plaza. We're at SpaceCenter Houston. I brought my son earlier this year We had a great time.
Did you actually do the Independence Plaza?
No, because I didn't know how to get out here. I didn't get to see any of that. I
I
didn't
remember
know.
when I came with my mom. I don't think we went.
Okay, first of all, I need my eyes to adjust. I should have brought some sunglasses.
Cameras adjusted.
Cameras adjusted.
Oh,
Okay.
fogged over. What?
I sure did. It's
No, it
nice
didn't.
and cool in there. So we're about to check out. It's like a NASA 747.
Can't really see it from this side.
Airplane.
It's blocked. We'll have to go inside and then see it. We're headed into Independence Plaza.
Independence Plaza. Big fan. We need one of these.
In the studio?
Big old donkey fan.
Why not? We're taking the stairs, right?
Stairs? Let's go.
Stairs.
Oh, I got it.
Hey, your wife wants to know how's it going. But she didn't say it on the stream, she texted.
She should be watching.
She should be watching, right?
Going up the
Okay.
stairs and we're taking it down.
There's an engine right there.
Yeah, get some shots of the big old
NASA.
space shuttle. So I'm gonna have to say, when Dr. Charles said we're not using space shuttles anymore since 2011,
I'm gonna make this.
what are we doing now? What are we doing?
We're gonna make this thing go. Oh wait, we're not supposed to say that out loud. No, we can't make. This thing is not gonna take off. This is a chance for you to just kind of walk through and see what's going on.
I thought girl shut the door. Oh.
Let's do the exit. Enter. All right, finally got this figured out. So we're inside the airplane. This is a Boeing airplane that would carry the space shuttle, just kind of like this,
Look at that one.
like that.
So, how long? When did this? You said 2016 is whenever they like delivered this in pieces and built it back together. So that's pretty cool. I'm pretty sure I remember that. Wasn't that long ago?
Yeah, this is cool.
But I remember there was a time whenever they were like driving stuff over, like up and down 146 or something. I don't know.
Reusable space plane. Where'd you go? Oh, I lost Gardy. See,
I was in first class.
rule number one of taking like a tour of NASA, or sorry, Space Center Houston.
Don't lose Gardy.
Don't lose Gardy, and don't lose your kids.
Don't lose my phone. So this is pretty cool. It looks a lot. I mean, it looks like a normal airplane. And yeah, there's a ton of people here, which is awesome. And there's a lot of cool stuff that I think we sometimes take for granted that is just here, and because we don't either know it's here. And this is something where I was talking to one of the staff members earlier. They have like camps that go on from ages 5 all the way up to in high school. So any like school age kids, they can come in and learn about space at any level. I think Kurt, I know he likes to feel like he's young at heart. Kurt,
come.
is this something?
Take it. You know, did I ever tell you the space camp story with the president when Bill Clinton was president?
Yes, you did.
Oh, okay.
You wrote a letter.
I wrote a letter
And
and
he-
asked where's space camp.
Yes.
And it was here all along.
It was right here, and you didn't know. So thank you, Bill Clinton, for sending that letter to Kurt. I think he still has it.
All right.
All right. So we're trying to break through. They're watching a cool little film, but I'm about to make this plane go.
Okay.
Do y'all like the back of my shirt? Show
All
them the
right.
back.
Aloha. All right. So
Okay. So here's a flight test power panel. So back in the no, I don't know much about this, but it looks cool. This looks like the equipment that we literally took out of the studio whenever Scott got here. We had some really old stuff, but I don't know. It's cool. Let's go. Wrap it up.
yeah.
We're about to wrap it up, guys. So there's a ton of people in here. I think the connection's kind of funny, but thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Space Center Houston and Dr. John Charles and everybody else here for letting us come and do this, and hopefully do some more stuff in the future. So y'all have an awesome day, and we'll see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. On Kickstart.